Hello and welcome back to FuzzyTek. I'm Fuzzy. This is technical, geeky, nerdy stuff, and if you've watched the last episode, you may have noticed I've changed my wallpaper. Again. That's because I formatted my system and couldn't remember where I found the previous one. So if anybody knows where the previous wallpaper was, I'd very much like it again. So please leave a comment down below and tell me where it is. Anyway, if you haven't watched the last episode, I suggest you do. If you haven't watched any of them, I suggest you start at the beginning. But anyway, we're going to be today adding the editing of a component modal success message or error. We're going to be centering the upload and delete buttons on the modal, as if you remember from last time they were a bit off, and we're going to be dealing with the datasheet uploading and deleting or linking to a datasheet URL somewhere. So let's begin. So here in PyCharm, all I've done is copy the add component form JavaScript that we made before to here. All I've changed so far is the comment line. But we're going to change it to edit component form so that when it's edited and updated, we'll be able to inform the user that it's successful or it's failed. So this URL is /update, not /add. And there we go. Now we can test it out. Now because this is a fresh format, I lost my previous database. Luckily it was just a test, so it doesn't really matter. But I added a component. Here I added an LED, and we can edit and try and update this. So we'll change it from LED to just diode and press save. Okay, so the reason it wasn't working, we didn't set the form to have an ID of edit component form, and also in the Python here on add we return a string of result.acknowledged if it was successful, but on the update method there is no result.acknowledged. I've done a little bit of digging and I couldn't find the exact thing to return, so I've just said if result is not none, return true as a string, which I'm pretty sure will now work. So if we edit our LED to say diode and then save changes, there we go, it's updated, we get the modal, all is well. So now we need to move on to centering this upload and delete button, because I'm a stickler for having things looking good and aligned as they should be. So I think next I'll center these before moving on to making them work. So if we see how the edit modal is created, so it's a column medium 4. The class is the same. I think it's pretty much exactly the same. So I need to figure out why it's not working as it should. We can check out the CSS, try and figure this out if I've added anything in there. And yes, here we are. Edit datasheet links has a height of 100% with a 10 pixel padding. So if we also add data sheet links, save and reload, it should fix that problem. Close these other ones. Control and F5 will refresh the CSS, and there we are. Now they're in the middle, just like this one. So now that's done and they're where they should be, we can make them do something. We want to be able to have an upload modal that will upload it and then reflect in here the uploaded file name. And then we want to be able to delete it, which will remove the file itself and the text from the field. The same with edit component. Or we can just ignore it, and the same as I've done here, put in a URL which will be clickable in this column. And talking of column, after that we will try to get to organizing the columns by clicking on them and maybe some pagination. But we'll do the column clicking first after we've dealt with getting this completely working. So let's move on to the upload and delete buttons for the datasheet. So in usual fashion, I have skipped forward a little bit and I've created a datasheet upload method in our modals HTML file. If we scroll down to the datasheet column, you can see I've added a span here. It could have been a div, but I just made it a span. It says the following line gets replaced depending on a radio button. This is what it is by default. To put in some text as it was before. Next to it in the other column, instead of the upload and delete buttons, there is this. It's a toggle. One is upload, the other is URL. I'll show you what it looks like. You may also notice these are links. I'll get to that in a minute. I couldn't resist just finishing the whole datasheet thing on add component at least before I moved on to the column sorting. Anyway, here is what we had before, so you could say not applicable, or put in a link like I've done there with Google. Or if you want to upload a datasheet, you press upload and it changes to a browse. And if you press browse, you'll be able to upload a supported type, which at the moment is PDF, doc, docx, text, and RTF. Well, I have a test text file here. If I open this, it will appear here. We can put in a name, test name for example, save and add. We have an error because it's already there. A datasheet with that file name already exists. That's this one. Okay, as you can see I removed the component, so now we can add another one again. Test name, we can upload the datasheet, test.txt, save and add. And there it is. If you notice down in the bottom corner, this will link to the text file, and this one to Google. How did I do that, you ask? Not magic, is the answer. Here in the component table HTML file, where we've got 4 row and table components, I look at the current index of the loop in the for loop. If it has this text in the cell, which is basically a URL, it will print the cell with a target of blank and link to the URL, so the content that's in it, and display it here. Otherwise, it will print the datasheet directory, which I've put in the config file, which is here, / whatever the cell is, so in our case test.txt, and then it ends that if and the for loop. So what have I done in the Python script? Well, I've imported this secure file name from this I'm not even going to try and pronounce. And in the add method for the form, it detects here if there's no uploaded file, it must be a link. So it will use the link in the component information. Otherwise, it will get the file, try to save it from another method here, which I'll show you in a second. And then it will save it if it's valid. And as I've wrote here, if all is well, return the location on the disk. So that's from, it gets that information if it's valid from here, save underscore datasheet file, which I have down here. So it takes the file, gets the save directory from the config. If the file exists, it will return an error, which you see earlier, a datasheet with the file name already exists. Otherwise, it will save it and return the directory / file name. If something goes wildly wrong, it returns an exception as a string. So it always returns a string, because up here it checks for a string. And then once it's figured out whether the datasheet is a link or a file, it will add it. And this is the same as before. It will add it to the database. Update, I haven't changed it. It's exactly the same as it was before. I'll get to that in a little bit. I just want to talk about some of the JavaScript because I want you to be in the know so you know what I've done. So up here where we've got the add component form that we had before, all I've changed in here is it's now new form data instead of serialized, and added these. That's basically all I've changed there, so that it sends the file itself rather than just the file name. And then up here, these are the file lines. So upload HTML. If it's going to be a file you're going to be uploading, it will put this in place of in that span that we see earlier. If it's going to be a link, it will put this there instead, which is the default one. And this basically says when this input with a name of datasheet toggle underscore has changed, so when it's been clicked on, it will swap between this one and this one, which is basically these. I've made them constants up here, but I could have put them in there, but it's a bit neater if you do it like that. So that's all I've done for the moment. If we run it again, it returns just the file name here, but it references the file itself. And the reason this doesn't load is because it's here, and I need to put it probably in templates. So it will be templates / datasheets / but when you view it, it will view it as just datasheets / whatever, or wherever you set it to in the config. So if you change this to just sheets, it would be templates / sheets / whatever, but when you visit it, it will just say sheets / yeah, you get the idea. One last very small detail that I've done is in the modals, when there's an error, it would close the previous modal and then show you the error, or if it was a success, it would close it and then show you the success. But now I've put current.hide only if there isn't an error. So if there's an error, the modal with the error details will show above the edit or add one, so that when you dismiss it, all the details you entered are still there and you don't have to then click again to bring the modal up that's hidden. So it will only hide if there's been a success reported rather than an error. because you'd want the chance to fix it. So that's a small little change I've made there. So I think we can move on to the last bits of the datasheet buttons, which is remove the datasheet file when the component is removed. So the actual file itself will be deleted when you delete the component, as well as add the same button functions that we have now to the edit component module. So it's uploaded or switched out for a text link. So let's move on to that. So again, I have stopped and done it and returned when it's already done, but it's really hard to do it whilst filming and talking about it at the same time, but I'll talk you through what's happened. On line 76 here, in the remove method, we remove the result where the ID is equal to the ID which is sent from the JavaScript that it gets from the form, but it also removes the datasheet if the component is successfully removed. Although that's not quite true, it will do it even if this isn't successful. But if a datasheet exists at the location, so that's in the user settings / whatever the datasheet's called, it will set it as the datasheet and then remove the file and return the result of this. If there's not a datasheet, it will do nothing here and just do as it did before, as if this was removed. So as I said before, we only sent the ID to this method, but now we need to send datasheet. And to do that, in the index.js file, here we had post ID equals the value of this, but I've added post datasheet is the value of this, and it sends ID post ID as before, as well as datasheet post datasheet. So then it can be read here via this and this. So that's removing the datasheet. I'll show you it in action. If we add a new component with a datasheet, we have test copy.txt, and then in here we can see it's created the file test copy.txt in the datasheet folder. And then if we go back, edit, delete, component is removed, it's gone from our list, and we go back in here, it's also removed the datasheet file itself. So that's removing the component along with its datasheet. Let's move on to showing how I got the edit function to change the datasheet information. So here we have the update. It gets the data from the form, does the date just as it has done before, and then it gets the file here from datasheet edit upload, which is from the modal that we created. If there is no file, it will get the link and set that as the datasheet. If there's not a link and there's no file, it will set the datasheet to blank. This prevents an error saying that the datasheet is invalid, blah blah blah. Else, if there is a file, it will call the save datasheet. If that returns the location of the datasheet, it sets it to it, otherwise we get an error. And then the result is the same as before. So I'll show you this one working. I'll reload it. Don't really need to, but I will. So I'll add one in. We'll say test name. I will upload a datasheet. Test copy.txt like we had from earlier. Save. And now I'll change it. Actually, I don't want it to be test copy.txt. I want it to be yahoo.com. Save changes. It updates in the database. Or I can change it again Actually, I want it to be datasheet3.txt. It uploads it and changes it here. So if we look here, there it is. What it doesn't do is delete the previous entry, but I'm not really too bothered about that. It could be an issue though. It might be something you want to add in if you get this from the GitHub, because maybe you will have a massive database and be changing data sheets around, or they get updated and you'll end up with taking up a lot of space with old data sheets that are never used. It might be something you want to think about adding if you wish, but I'm not going to bother. So now that's done, I'm going to add a method that will help us resolve this issue. I'm going to use a route to tell it to redirect the user to this folder if this is datasheets. If the user changes this to something else, it will take this and go straight there. So if, for example, if they set it to this, it will take this as the whole thing. Otherwise, it will use this folder. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to start with defining the root. So app.root, and it will be / and then whatever the user chooses / and we'll say sheet file. There we are. We'll define datasheet URL and we'll take in sheet file. I'll just copy this, much easier. So here we're going to say if this is not datasheets, and we're going to return, we're going to say send file, and what we're going to send back is whatever it is / whatever the file is. So that's this again, and sheet file. If it is datasheets, we'll return send file again, datasheets / okay, so that should be it. I am missing something here. Oh yes, of course, I have put this like so. I'm missing a bracket. There we are, this should work. So if I save this and run it, we will try to load this. It will return our datasheet at /datasheets / whatever the file is. That works fine. Now if I change in the config to something else, I don't know, something like that, whatever someone may have. And then we go back here. You can see down the bottom it goes to see, I mean I've used backslash as backslash and / because, you know, Linux, Windows, whatever. That can maybe be something you might want to fix in GitHub. Again, I'm not bothered because I'm just going to leave the default datasheet folder. I've got no reason to change it. But that would work. That would load our datasheet from here, but I'm going to put it back to datasheets. Reload it again. And there we go. Working fine. So now we've got that working, it's time to move on to column sorting. And by that I mean when we click on name, it sorts by name. Location will sort alphabetically by location. And so on. Amount will sort numerically by lowest to highest, and you click it again, highest to lowest. But I also don't want to make this episode too long, so I think I'll save that for the next one. So with that, I'll say if you like this episode, give it a like. If you didn't, please tell me why. And consider subscribing and pressing the bell. Many thanks for watching. If you have any feedback and suggestions, leave them below. Until next time, bye bye.